Cowboys, Niners, Sunday Night Football. Which NFC playoff team from last year can get right? We're picking that in every game today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5.
Joe, week 8 is upon us. We have a showcase of 2023 NFC contenders in prime time, which is, I don't think the game the league thought they were going to get when they put Cowboys Niners on Sunday Night Football, but it's a pretty critical game for both of those teams and where they are at with their respective struggles. The Bengals look to climb back to 500 after a slow start with a game against Philadelphia at 1 o'clock. And then tonight, with the Rams playing the Vikings in Los Angeles, with the Rams kind of rumored to be a team that's maybe prepared to sell and trade Cooper Kupp. And how far does this win go in determining which way that kind of decision goes, which is an odd dynamic because like Cooper Kupp's missed a bunch of time and then is potentially going to come back and play in this game. And this is the game that decides if he continues to be here. It's just an awkward spot for a player to be in, but we're going to do our best to pick that game in every game on the week 8 schedule.
No bye weeks this week, Kyle. Not a single team. Week 7. All 32 in action this week.
Great news for everybody's fantasy team.
You know, that's not a bad point.
You know?
Yeah.
It's nothing worse than having to churn the waiver wire for a replacement level player or a super flex. And I know somebody in one of my hometown league had to trade for Tyler Huntley to start at quarterback last week because his quarterback was on a bye, and that story didn't end up very well. So, yeah. If you're not familiar with the structure of this show, Joe and I pick the games straight up. And we've had 2 straight really good weeks. We have figured out the pulse of the league. Joe, last week we were different on 3 games?
Yeah, you got 2 of them.
Dolphins, Colts. Joe had the Colts. Kyle had the Colts. Joe had the Dolphins. Joe was on the Colts. Changed it with about 3 seconds left at the end of the show.
How silly! I've been wrong about the Dolphins like literally every game this year.
Yeah, so I hope you're riding the Cardinals because I'm going to the game. So help me out a little bit. The Chiefs, 49ers. I was buying in on the psychological element of the 49ers, and that story didn't turn out very well for me. And then Cardinals, Chargers, of course. Just the bizarro game of bizarro games. Arizona had like 2 plays offensively the entire game, but it was enough to win the football game, we both finished with 15 games. So you were 11-4 last week. I was 12-3 last week, straight up pick 'em. Yeah, and then the show, the last 2 weeks picks against the spread based on the roster power rankings that we do. And that is 20-9 against the spread the last 2 weeks. 20-9.
On a heater.
We are on a heater with the show picking against the spread. So the show picks against the spread. We pick the games head up, and we are starting in L.A. for Vikings, Rams.
Vikings.
I am also picking the Vikings. I don't know. It's L.A.'s not on full strength offensively. They have a young defense that I think Kevin O'Connell will be able to, with Aaron Jones being back. Obviously, you saw the value when he was missing time for Minnesota. I think you can minimize your ability to get after Sam Darnold if you're Minnesota and Kevin O'Connell because of the youth and inexperience and having Aaron Jones, and then just this Flores defense going against a not 100% Rams offense is not a matchup that I like very much.
Yeah, I don't know what the Rams are good at, you know?
playing hard through injury. That's the number one thing that comes to mind, because they play hard every week, and that's what you will say. I would expect this is going to be a pretty competitive game, but where do they hang their hat, especially with some of the investments that they made with guys up front, and some of those guys are banged up, so you're not seeing the full returns on all that too. Yeah. The show likes Minnesota to cover the -2.5. Let's go to 1:00.
Let's do it.
No overseas game, so you got to wait an extra 3.5 hours, which is a bummer for football to start. But we'll start in South Florida with the Dolphins and presumably the return of Tua Tagovailoa. I know that process and clearing concussion protocol, and you have to have a football activities thing to clear protocol, and he only just got a chance to do that on Wednesday, but he's been non-symptomatic since the day after he had the concussion. It's like very messy, but the expectation is he's going to play. Dolphins favored by 3.5 points on FanDuel. The show likes the Dolphins to cover the 3.5, presuming Tua plays, and we'll leave it at that. Now, what do you think of the game, Joe?
I think the Dolphins win. Tua is a big deal in his return. The Cardinals 31st in yards per play allowed against the pass, and I think this obviously is a sleeping giant of a passing offense with Tua and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and them kind of looking to get things on track. So I think that combined with Arizona, short week across the country.
Yeah.
Give me the Dolphins.
Plus their best pass rusher too. Dennis Garnick went down on ACL. And what a underappreciated player it feels like he is nationally, just because the Cardinals are not a known team, but like the past 3-4 years, he's been like a 6'8" sack guy.
Yeah, he's exactly.
Nice player.
Yeah, he is.
I would just say this, my only word of caution for Miami, please don't come out and throw the ball 42 times.
It's possible.
You've had, I know it's possible. And you just mentioned like the sleeping giant part of it. And like it came to my head.
Right.
It's like, please do not try to get 5 weeks worth of passing productivity back in one game. Like you have seen a lot of growth in what you're able to do running the football. And I would argue this Cardinals front is worse than the last two fronts that you played. Don't ask Tua to come back and do too much and put up all these points and throw for 500 yards. Like, run the ball, get into a rhythm, work your play pass, which is the staple that you just had nothing working for you because none of your quarterbacks could see the field, and you tried to call an offense the way that it worked. Don't do that. Don't get cute, right? Don't sit here and play this like it's a game of Madden. Take the things that you did well while Tua was gone, use his return to hit the things that were missing that were available. And I think the Dolphins win, and I think they would cover -3.5. That spread's gone up a little bit. I think they'd cover that pretty comfortably.
Agreed.
Another AFC East game, this one featuring two teams in the division, the Jets. The 2-5 Jets playing the Patriots for last place in the AFC East. Logic says Jets here, right?
Yeah, it does. But boy, would you be surprised, Kyle?
No.
Drake May's kind of played well.
No, I would not be.
It's not like the Jets have a defensive line that can really take advantage of what the Patriots are lacking up front at their tackle position. I could see it, but man, I think you got to pick the Jets.
I am picking the Jets. The show likes the Patriots to cover +7. It's a big number for a team that really hasn't. The entire perception of why this is such a lopsided matchup is because they've played already this year and the Jets smoked them.
Yeah, and I think the Jets are playing worse while the Patriots are probably playing better.
They are. And Drake May, the concern with Drake May playing was never, does he get it? It was, what is the situation like to protect him from excessively getting hit and developing bad habits? Well, I would probably say this. I would be more keen to pick the upset if Gerard Mayo wasn't just tipping the bucket over and making a mess every week, it seems like, when he talks to the media about his football team.
He seems goofy. He does. For sure.
Calling his team soft, and then Bill Belichick goes out on every media outlet that he's working with right now.
I would too.
Yeah, I wouldn't call his team soft.
Number one in run defense.
Over there last year, they were pretty good against the run.
Well, listen, one thing, if I wanted to give Gerard Mayo any credit, he's conveniently overlooking that like Jabril Peppers and Christian Barmore and Juwan Bentley are not available. Those are kind of important players. One on each 3 level.
By the way.
Right. Bill wants, but Marcus Jones is available. Bill Belichick would like you to know. So there's, it's interesting, but I yeah, I feel like the messaging from Mayo is kind of getting goofy, and I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, especially it's even like the tone of when Drake May was going to play.
Yes. When I decide. Right.
And then it was like, well, the way we were playing games wasn't sustainable, so we had to make.
Yeah.
So which one is it? Right. It doesn't matter now. He's in. You
Right.
can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like
right.
Mays looked pretty good, and I'd be surprised if this isn't a scrappy competitive game just based on. It's a second chance. New England's at home. They got a new quarterback that gives them more life on offense. Like, we'll see.
And what have the Jets given you that makes you say that you should really believe in them? Nothing.
Devontae Adams gave a speech in the locker room after the game after he was there for 2 days.
Hey, he made a cool tackle on that interception.
He did make a cool tackle.
That was a good play.
He's embodying what he's preaching to his teammates, which I do appreciate.
All right. A lot more games to get to, including the next one's a big one. Eagles, Bengals. We'll talk about that and more on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly, pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off.
I tell you what my story was for 3013 this week, by the way.
No.
Drops tomorrow. Top 10 running backs for the 2025 NFL draft.
Ashton Genty, RB1. Hot take?
No.
Boy, if anybody doesn't have him, kick rocks.
Let me know. Right? Like, do you remember? I think it was Chris Sims. And Chris has some goofy takes, but Chris has some pre-draft stuff that I think he actually kind of hits pretty well because he like stays outside the bubble. Mm-hmm. You remember he had like Neighbors and I think both Neighbors and Brian Thomas over Marvin Harrison Jr.
Looking like a good take right now.
Crazy take at the time, but it's looking pretty good right now, right? Like,
yeah.
But I would not put Ashton Genty in that bucket. Is right. The conversation's not is he RB1? It's by how much is he RB1? And the answer is a great deal. Yeah. All right. A couple of teams that probably, I guess, maybe the Bengals could use a running back, but not in the stratosphere of where Ashton Genty's going to get drafted for the relative to the needs of that team. And the Eagles certainly don't need Genty because they have someone named Saquon Barkley who lit his old team up in the utmost way in week 7. So Philly is in Cincinnati against the Bengals with the Bengals favored at home by 1.5.
I want you to pick this game first.
I was sitting here wondering, you'd like put your eyes down. You said, I'm going to pretend to check something on my phone, maybe put off some body language so Kyle can keep talking.
Right. That was all the clues. I would like you to go first.
I think the Bengals win the game. I think the Bengals are a team that are experienced with being in the position of having your back against the wall. I think they've played well historically over the past couple of seasons in spite of slow starts. They're in the process of doing that again. This is a chance to climb back to 500 for them. Am I worried about trying to defend Saquon Barkley with what the Bengals have in their front seven? Yes. Am I worried about covering A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith? Yes. I would take the over. The over would be the most pristine thing that I would take in this, and I don't know what it is, but I would take the over regardless. kind of expect this game to get up into at least the mid-50s, if not the 60s from a points perspective.
So you're going Cincy?
I'm going Cincinnati.
I'm going different on this one. I'm going Philly to go into Cincy and get this win. I just feel like the Eagles are going to be able to run the ball like you mentioned. I think there's some matchup problems with their wide receivers against the Bengals secondary. And I don't really, and I know that this is true about Philly too, but like even as we've looked at the Bengals as a team that's playing better offensively, the production's really not that impressive to me. 17 points against the Giants, 21 points against the Browns, under 190 passing yards in both of those games. Like I feel like the explosive plays are there more for Philly, and I feel like Philly's defense matches up just a little bit better against Cincy. So I don't have a great deal of confidence, but I feel good enough to go different than you on this. So give me
what are your thoughts on the Fred Johnson, who's played well,
right,
in place of Mailata,
Jeff Southland,
Trey Hendrickson matchup?
Concerned about
that's
it.
one that leans heavy in my mind in this game too.
Concerned about it for sure. Yeah.
Are you agreeable to points? How about we look that up? How about we look that up on FanDuel for the second break? What the game total is for points in Eagles.
Okay.
And we'll make our determination there on the second break. But my gut says expect a lot of points. The show likes the Bengals to cover -1.5 as well. Green Bay in Jacksonville. Jaguars home, overseas trip for 2 weeks. Got the win against the Patriots, looked good in doing so. The Packers last week snuck out a tough win against the Texans, an ugly win, which you'd expect with a couple of competitive football teams. Riding Green Bay here, right?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Absolutely.
The show likes Green Bay to cover -4.5 as well. Anything you want to add to this matchup?
Jacksonville's at home. I think that's helpful. I think it's mitigated by it being returned from London. I don't really think I can't find the advantage for Jacksonville in this game.
I'm a little worried about the plethora of passing game options that Green Bay has, and Jacksonville covering them.
No doubt. Yeah.
And you got a quarterback who can move around a little bit, negate some of their pass rush that they bring to the table. So pretty good chance to negate what the Jaguars do best up front too.
And respectfully, just a much better coach team than Packers are.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so the Falcons are visiting Tampa Bay in a critical NFC South matchup between a couple of teams that lost last week. Atlanta losing to the Seahawks in Atlanta, and the Bucs losing to the Ravens in a hard-fought game, but a game that was costly in more ways than one, with Mike Evans going down with a hamstring injury, Chris Godwin dislocating his ankle. So the Bucs are hurting coming into this game against the Falcons.
And Atlanta won this game 3 weeks ago, right? An overtime win over Tampa. It's helpful that this game is in Tampa, but I think Atlanta coming off of an embarrassing loss probably for them, and I know certainly the same is true for Tampa Bay. But for this quickly on a short week to have to like refigure out your top two weapons in the passing, it's too much. Like if one of them was gone, like okay, we can talk about it. I don't know, man. The Bucs defense is really struggling right now. I think Atlanta goes on the road and wins this game.
Yeah, I think Atlanta wins too. The show does as well. The wide receiver injury is very costly for Tampa and their roster scoring and how that measures for them. So it's a big time bummer, and the Bucs are just going to have to. It's funny, the perception of the conferences before the season, AFC's crazy. You might get 10 wins and miss the playoffs in the AFC. Well, don't look now.
Right.
But the NFC is the team that could get a little crazy. And that whole NFC North, I think if the playoffs started today, every NFC North team would have a playoff spot. So that there's Washington and Philadelphia. There's these two teams in the South. You have whoever's going to win. Like, can San Francisco make a run and can Seattle keep it up? Like, 10 wins might miss you a playoff spot in the NFC this year when it's all said and done.
I think there's more likely to be a 9-win AFC playoff team.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would
based
agree.
on 7 weeks of the season.
And we say that to say for Tampa, like, you just got to bite down and grit through this stretch, and you get expected to get Mike Evans back after their bye in a couple of weeks. But probably not going to happen this week, or at least we don't like it to. Let's get one more. And then, dang, dude, we got Boogie.
Yeah, well, I think we can get these next 3 very quickly.
Okay, Ravens versus Browns. You're
Ravens.
right.
Ravens, thank you.
We're picking the Ravens. The show also, surprisingly, Jameis Winston being named the starter allows the Browns to at least be favored to cover plus 9.5. So the show likes Cleveland plus 9.5 with a competent quarterback. They're one of the better backup quarterback situations in the league, and they get to use it here. Ironically, they might be one of the only situations where the backup quarterback's better than the starter. But
hey, listen, let's keep Ross Jackson happy. We'll get the break here. Coming up next, AFC South, big game. The Colts are 4-3. Okay, so they're playing the Texans. We'll get to that and the rest of the slate. Folks, be sure to stick with us. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. They got a great deal here for you. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. I've been having success with my road underdog money line bets. I already have one this week. You learned about it already. I have the Eagles going into Cincy and winning that game. Kyle thinks there's going to be points. Right now, FanDuel has the over-under at 47.5. That feels like a smash the over there potentially. I got another road. Coming up in segment 3, I have another road underdog money line that I'm taking as well. So you can check that out and more over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That is FanDuel.com.
all right. Colts at Texans. Texans favored by 5.5.
The Colts are 4-3, man, but I'm not buying in. I think Texans at home, bounce back game against this defense is not Green Bay's defense. Houston.
Yeah. Wins against Pittsburgh is a quality win for the Colts. Chicago is a quality win for the Colts. The last 2 at Tennessee and Miami in games realistically that they probably should have lost both games and then lost to Jacksonville. I think the process to 4-3 is not quite as good as the record and result of 4-3. So I think Houston will get back on the horse, especially after dropping that tough game to Green Bay last week.
Yeah.
The show likes the Texans to cover 5.5. Tennessee, Detroit. Okay.
Not a fair fight. Not a fair fight.
Detroit's favored by 10.5 points. This is what, our only double-digit spread this weekend.
Right.
I can tell you the show likes Detroit to cover by more than 10.5. So we're on Detroit minus 10.5. I'm on the Lions. I assume you're on the Lions.
On the Lions, for sure.
If there's ever a team that's just going to be able to run the ball on Tennessee the way that they want to, it's this team, right?
Right. And you even hear Dan Campbell this week going on like the media tour saying, this is the best defense we're going to face all year because they're like #1 in yards.
Right.
Oh, boy. Yeah, good luck.
Okay. Chargers home against Saints. First 4:00 game this weekend. And they are favored at home by minus 7.5.
Saints are too shorthanded, right? I know they're getting a little bit more healthy, but the depth of this roster has been exposed. There's no momentum. They were a joke. They play Thursday night? Did I have to watch the Saints? It was Spencer Rattler against the Broncos.
Broncos.
Boy, the extra time ain't gonna help them. I don't really, and this is like a major time discrepancy because the Chargers played Monday night, so they got a lot of advantages here. But I don't believe in the Saints for a minute.
The show likes the Saints to cover plus 7.5, but I am with you on the Chargers. I kind of wanted to pick the Saints. I just don't think they have enough of their guys. Like if they were a little healthier, I'd probably be like, yeah, I'll do the Cardinals-Chargers thing from last week and just say on a gut reaction, I'll just pick it. You get it for the chaos of it. But Chargers by minus 7.5 feels like a big number. So the show likes Saints plus 7.5, but I'm with you. Buffalo favored by 3 going into Seattle. Really interesting matchup. I think the the matchups of note. DK Metcalf with the grade 1 MCL sprain.
Yeah.
So he's week to week. That puts a lot more pressure on the smaller receivers that Seattle has in JSN and Tyler Lockett. I don't like those matchups relative to Christian Benford at corner. So he's been one of the best lockdown corners thus far this season. The Bills and what they have up front with their interior defensive line rushing against that interior offensive line for Seattle. It's a pretty tough matchup. I know Seattle's playing some musical chairs. That's why they did the Jerome Baker trade. They didn't want Baker on their defense to have to play against Buffalo because Josh tags him for 2 touchdowns every time they play against each other.
You know,
there's some real galaxy brain stuff here.
Gave a 4th-round pick, man. This is kind of a crazy trade.
And how crazy is it? Like, Rand Carthon traded a 5.
5 and a 6.
Didn't he get a 6 back?
Oh, no, you have 5 and a 6 back. You're right. Yeah, so exactly.
He traded a 5 for a 6 and Ernest Jones, and then traded Ernest Jones into a 4 and Jerome Baker.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. Like, tip of the cap to Rand Carthon for playing the musical chair. That's the guy who offers you the weird fantasy football trade, and you're like, yeah, I'll do this. Like, what does it matter? And then he turns around and parlays it off into some, like, massive trade elsewhere.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think they necessarily thought that far ahead with the Ernest Jones stuff, but
right. I'm sure they liked him. They in divisional player, right, with the Rams, and I'm sure the Rams were not going to trade him to Seattle, so they kind of had to find their way to get him. And obviously, that's an important spot for Mike McDonald's defense.
I say all that to say I think the Bills are going to win the game.
I don't have a lot of confidence in the Bills this week. I think that Seattle is a really, really talented team. They have prototypes everywhere. And my biggest concern is with DK out, if all of a sudden this team becomes run-centric as they kind of gravitated towards a little bit last week. Yeah, they're still the most pass-aggressive team in the league, 67% pass rate. But they ran the ball the most that they did last week, and they set up their run action stuff, their play action stuff. And the Bills will give up rushing yards. And if there's anybody that can take advantage of creases, it's freaking Ken Walker. So I'm very concerned about that. In addition to the Bills on the road, after I don't feel like they really manage their road dates with Baltimore or Houston particularly well. I think Seattle.
I think good against anybody on the road this season. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I'm glad to hear they played somebody well on the road this year. I just love gaslighting you over it at this point because it's all I have. So please continue. Please continue. They don't play well on the road this year, except for their second home. Go ahead.
Right, your words, not mine. I'm not going against you in this game because you picked the Bills, but boy, I could see the path for Seattle for sure.
Okay, you have until the end of the show to change your mind.
I'm not. Are you kidding me? After last week, switching to the friggin' Dolphins at the buzzer.
Maybe I'll change it to the buzzer. We'll see. The show likes the Bills -3 as well, from a raw numbers perspective. We have 5 games to get to in 110 seconds. Sorry, Ross. It's not going to happen. Bears.
Hey, his ad breaks are at the right spot. So,
Bears -2.5 in Washington. Jane Daniels probably not going to go.
Right. Doesn't that kind of ruin this game?
It does ruin this game. I have no interest in this game now.
But if it's Daniels versus Williams, you're like, yeah, that's cool. We'll watch that.
Absolutely. Without Jaden Daniels, I am picking the Bears to win the football game.
Yeah, I think you have to. Especially coming off the bye with extra rest.
The show likes the Bears -2.5 without Jaden Daniels as well. Bryce Young's back. That's the good news. The bad news is you get to play the Broncos defense in Denver. Welcome back, Bryce.
I'm not trying to be not sensitive to this situation, but do we know more about this Andy Dalton car wreck?
Thumb sprain.
Okay, so there is something as man, if
they specified a thumb sprain.
Okay. The Panthers are a joke, man.
Yeah, they're not a good
but for all the quarterback conversations that we can have, the defense, man. Dude, they give up 40 a week, man. 40.
It's been bad, especially the last 3 weeks.
No chance. No chance.
Going on the road is a killer. Having Bryce back in the lineup is a killer against this defense. I don't care how much Bo Nix struggles in the first half of a football game. I'm picking the Broncos, and the show likes the Broncos -7.5 or -9.5. That's how bad it is. That the Broncos are favored on our system by more than 9.5 with Bryce Young back in.
Meanwhile, Javonte Williams is kind of back, right?
Yeah. It's fun, right? Like, because he was such a fun player at UNC.
Right.
And then he obviously had the injury, and then last year just never really looked like himself. And it was supposed to be what? Jaleel McLaughlin was going to be like this fantasy relevant player for them. Didn't happen. Javonte had like, I think it was statistically speaking, one of like the 3 best games of his career last week.
And he's cooking.
Speaking of cooking, the Chiefs, hot off the heels of acquiring DeAndre Hopkins, go to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. They're favored on the road by 9.5 points.
I mean, Chiefs are obviously the right pick here, but don't the Raiders sometimes like play the Chiefs pretty tight?
They won't this year. Raiders.
I agree.
Chiefs by $1 billion.
I gotta take a look real quick at the recent success here. It's not what you think it is. It's not what you think it is.
They played them tough last year.
Yeah, there was the one game, December 25th last year. It was a close game. But then the Chiefs have won like the last 7 and like 10 of the last 13. It's not what you think it is.
Yeah. So Chiefs by a lot.
Yeah.
The show likes Chiefs by a lot as well.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Sunday Night Football. Cowboys at 49ers. 49ers. Let's see if we can keep all this in line. Put Brandon Ayuk on injured reserve. He's done for the year. Deebo Samuel, thankfully, is released from the hospital, but was in the hospital with pneumonia. Christian McCaffrey maybe starting to get close to being able to come back, but like they've had running game production with Jordan Mason. Their defense is kind of a mess, but then on the other side, you got Dallas, and they can't run the ball worth a lick. They got one receiving option. San Francisco has always played Dallas really well, and it's in San Francisco. Yeah, the only thing Dallas has, I think, is that they're coming off the bye. I like the 49ers, man. This could get real ugly for Dallas, and I think the Jerry Jones circus the last couple of weeks is not helping the cause.
I like Dallas in this game.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? Talk me into it.
Well, coming off the bye after getting smoked by Detroit, I think helps. I think San Francisco just like so much attrition that they've faced to this point. I think Purdy's his interception luck is starting to change more and more. And I think that Dallas is, decent pass pro team. And I think that matters a ton in this game. No, Dallas can't really run the ball, but San Francisco, with their injuries up front, not necessarily stopping it. They gave up 184 yards rushing to the Chiefs. They gave up 169 to Arizona. I think that Dallas has a real shot to go in and win this game. So I'm predicting that to happen. So my two road dog money lines that I'm taking: Dallas in San Francisco and Philly in Cincinnati.
Good for you, man. I don't have the stones to do it. And I would like Dallas to be relevant, like down the stretch, and like make it really interesting as like a 3-horse race in the East. But I just don't think they have it. And I think the Jerry stuff the past couple weeks has been really bad. And I think is it creating unnecessary distractions? And then he's talking in the media about how they have bad play design, talking about Mike McCarthy, and then Mike McCarthy's got to get asked about it. And he says, well, I meet with Jerry all the time, and it never came up. So I don't think we have bad plays. And it's just a lot of extra right now with Dallas that I don't like.
If there is one thing that I do agree with Jerry on right now, is that I don't think they were in position to maximize Derrick Henry.
Not with their offensive line.
No, and I think Derrick Henry's.
To say you can't afford him is a bold-faced lie because of the existence of void years and what you.
Right, but dude, what a weird like thing to hold someone to the fire for, that they didn't sign a free agent running back.
It's Derrick Henry, dude.
Anybody could have signed him.
Yeah.
He went to the best possible place. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew, oh yeah, this is going to be a problem. Anywhere else, he'd probably be just like he was in Tennessee. But he went to frickin' Baltimore.
Just like he was in Tennessee, but
that's not necessarily a knock on him. But we're talking about a guy that was like averaging like 4.2 yards per carry over his last 850 rushes.
I hear you, but their answer was the ghost of Zeke Elliott and Rico Dowdle. Like,
No, yeah, they could have done better.
It's an unserious plan.
But it doesn't have to be from that to Derrick Henry. There's middle ground here that I think they should have probably explored.
Probably. I think absolutely. But if there was an interest in Derrick Henry, but it was just dismissed as, well, we can't afford him. Well, you could have afforded him. You especially could have afforded him if you didn't fart around with your contracts, but you could have afforded him either way with there's salary cap.
Right. There's a lot more that's into it. And Jerry deserves a lot of blame. I 100% agree with that. But I don't necessarily want to to me, Derrick Henry's not the thing that I'm championing in the blunders.
Right. Their process was much worse all around.
Yeah.
I think that's totally fair. But I do think it is interesting. They are a team that is generally right now lacking in a lot of the non-premiums. Right. Their interior offensive line.
Yeah.
Running back. Tight end's been okay with Jake Ferguson, but it's not like it's typically been like a staple position for them. Linebackers, a tire fire. I don't know. Well, maybe these non-premium positions matter as well. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the Detroit Lions.
The show likes Dallas because of the injuries to San Francisco to cover +4.5. Which brings us to, God bless it, who's starting quarterback for the Giants? It's Giants Steelers. It's Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones, baby.
Man, who finishes the game at quarterback for the Giants? Daniel Jones?
It's a good question. Imagine your fantasy quarterbacks being Daniel Jones, Will Levis, and Justin Fields.
Is that one of your teams?
Couldn't be me. My teams. Imagine having more than one fantasy team. Oh, I have one fantasy team. Those are my quarterbacks. Not to mention I do have Bo Nix, so let's not sleep on him. But I do have, those are my quarterbacks. I have Bo Nix
as well. I wish you could play him for a half. I'd play him in the second half of all my lineups. He'd be fine.
The rushing yards are nice for Bo Nix that he gets, right?
Right. Pittsburgh's at home. They're favored by 6.5 points off of a big win, a offensive explosion, if you will, against the best defense since the 85 Bears, we'd been told.
Yeah, baby.
We're 37 minutes in. If I could stick the knife in there and twist it around a little bit, I'm going to take my shots.
Steelers. So does that mean the only two that to finish? I'm sorry.
The show likes the Steelers -6.5.
So the only two that we're different on are my two road dogs, Eagles going into Philly and
Dallas.
Wow.
Versus San Francisco and Cincinnati. Underdogs that the show is on this week to cover their point spreads. New England +7. Baltimore or Cleveland +9.5. New Orleans +7.5. Dallas +4.5. Pretty good list. Anytime you get the big numbers, it's tempting. A couple big numbers there. +7, +7.5, +9.5. So we'll see. But that is going to do it for us here on Locked On NFL Scouting. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He is Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We are back tomorrow with Takes on Takes, which is our weekly mailbag where you, through Twitter, give us your hottest takes for the week, and we react to your takes by giving our take on your take, hence Takes on Takes. We hope to see you then. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, we're out of here.